Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we're tackling something quite interesting, a real contrast between two chapters right next to each other in Genesis, chapters 36 and 37.
Yes, it's like a deliberate setup, isn't it? You get this one picture in 36, and then bam, something completely different in 37.
Exactly. So our mission today is to really dive into that juxtaposition. We've got sources that let us compare these two families. On one hand, you have Esau's family. They seem to achieve, well, pretty rapid worldly success, get organized, found the nation of Edom.
Right, very structured, very established, you could say.
And then you flip the page to Jacob's family, the one with the divine covenant, the promise, and it just seems to immediately fall apart. We're talking jealousy, chaos, even attempted murder.
It's a profound contrast. And you know how chapter 36 often gets glossed over. People see it as just a long list of names, a genealogy, maybe a bit boring.
Yeah, I can see that.
But when you really look at it, it's like a blueprint for, well, earthly success, how to build a nation fast. Then 37 hits you with the family that should have it all together, spiritually speaking, and they're consumed by dysfunction.
So the big question driving us today is, how does this happen? How does the family with the divine promise end up being so incredibly toxic internally, while the other one seems so, well, functional on the outside?
That's the core of it. Let's start where the text starts us with Esau in chapter 36.
Okay. Esau, we often think of him as, the failure, the one who sold his birthright. But chapter 36 paints a very different picture, doesn't it? It details the lineage of Edom, and it really frames him as a success story, in worldly terms at least.
Absolutely. It's incredibly meticulous, which again is probably why people skip it. But the details matter. He settles in the hill country of Seir, that's rugged strategic territory. And the genealogy isn't just a list, it shows a whole society taking shape. It emphasizes stability, political integration.
So tell us about that family structure. What choices did Esau make right off the bat that put him on a different path from, say, Abraham or Jacob?
Well, look at his marriages. That's the first big clue. He marries multiple women: Adah the Hittite, Oholibamah the Hivite, Basemath, who was Ishmael's daughter. This isn't just polygamy, it's strategic assimilation.
Strategic assimilation.
Yeah, meaning he's actively marrying into the powerful local groups. He's building alliances, integrating his family immediately into the surrounding cultures. This is completely different from the Abrahamic covenant line, right? Isaac and Rebekah, they emphasized marrying within the extended family, endogamy, to keep that distinct spiritual identity.
I see. So Esau basically prioritized immediate political and social connections over that long-term spiritual separation.
Precisely. And that choice is fundamental to how quickly his descendants build a successful nation. He's trading that long-term distinctiveness, maybe, for short-term power and stability.
And the chapter shows the results of that choice pretty fast, doesn't it?
It really does. The genealogy moves quickly. It lists sons, then it lists chiefs, or dukes, as some translations put it. These are tribal leaders. But then it goes further. It lists actual kings who ruled in Edom.
Kings?
Yes, names like Bela, Jobab, Hadad. And here's the kicker, the detail that often gets missed. The text explicitly says these kings ruled in Edom before any king reigned over the Israelites.
Wait, hold on. So Esau's descendants, the Edomites, had established a monarchy, a centralized political system, before the Israelites even got close to that stage.
That's the bombshell in chapter 36. Edom gets politically organized, stable, and powerful much faster than Jacob's line. While Jacob's family is still dealing with internal drama and, soon slavery in Egypt, Edom has kings. It shows the difference between prioritizing earthly integration versus navigating the messy, slow, often painful path of the spiritual covenant.
And our sources also mentioned the separation between the brothers being important for Esau's success. They just had too much stuff, too many herds for Canaan to support both of them.
Yeah, that physical separation was crucial. Esau moves to Seir. This removes the immediate source of conflict, proximity, and competition for resources. By getting away from Jacob, Esau creates space for his family to organize and build that kingdom without the constant friction.
Whereas Jacob stays put.
Jacob stays put, keeping all that dysfunction, all those rivalries packed together in one place. It's almost inevitable that it explodes internally. Esau achieved external stability partly through separation.
But even within Esau's success story, there's a little hook, a seed of future conflict for Israel, right?
Yeah.
We need to talk about Amalek.
Yes, absolutely. Amalek pops up. He's the son of Eliphaz, who is Esau's son.
Right.
And Amalek's mother is Timnah, Eliphaz's concubine. The descendants of Amalek, the Amalekites, become this persistent enemy for Israel throughout their history.
A perennial enemy.
Exactly. And the sources point to a typological significance here.
Okay, let's clarify typology for everyone listening. When we say typology, we mean an Old Testament person or event that sort of prefigures or points towards something in the New Testament, often Christ, or a spiritual truth. Is that right?
That's a great way to put it. And in this case, the Amalekites are seen as a type of stubborn sin, something that Israel constantly has to fight against, something difficult to completely root out. They attack Israel when they're weak or vulnerable. It's like Esau's lineage, while successful outwardly, also produces this ongoing spiritual battle for the covenant people.
So even in success, there's this shadow. Okay, so we have this picture. Esau's line, Edom. Organized, successful kingdom, born from assimilation and separation. Now let's pivot. Chapter 37. Jacob settles back in Canaan, the promised land, but his household, it's not a kingdom, it's more like a powder keg waiting to blow.
It's an absolute mess internally. The family structure itself was just incredibly complex from the start. You've got the four mothers, Leah, Rachel, and then the handmaids, Bilhah and Zilpah. That setup alone guarantees competition, doesn't it? Fractured loyalties, rivalry over who Jacob loves more, who gets what inheritance. It's a built-in fault line.
And Jacob himself triggers the earthquake along that fault line. He falls right back into the same toxic pattern he grew up with, parental favoritism.
Yes, he repeats the cycle. He clearly loves Joseph more than his other sons. Why? Because Joseph is the son of his old age and, crucially, the firstborn son of Rachel, his favorite wife.
And he doesn't just feel this love privately. He makes it blindingly obvious.
He makes it public, tangible. He gives Joseph that coat, the coat of many colors, or more accurately, probably a long tunic with sleeves. We need to grasp what this meant back then. It wasn't just a nice robe.
It was a status symbol.
A huge one. It signaled that Joseph was exempt from the hard manual labor that others likely did. More than that, it was a public declaration of elevated status, a signal that Jacob intended a special inheritance for him, probably bypassing the older sons according to the usual rules of primogeniture.
Primogeniture, the idea that the firstborn son gets the main authority and inheritance. So giving this coat to Joseph, who's like the 11th son,
was basically spitting in the face of Reuben, Simeon, Levi, all the older ones. It was a direct public insult in that honor-shame culture, a massive humiliation.
You'd think Jacob, having experienced favoritism and deception firsthand, would know better. Why do it? Was he just blind, or was he deliberately trying to elevate Joseph?
That's the tragic question, isn't it? He was so deeply wounded himself, yet he seems completely blind to the damage he's inflicting. Maybe he thought he could just impose his will because of his love for Rachel and Joseph. He failed to see, or maybe refused to see, the depth of the resentment he was cultivating. It's a classic failure of leadership, really.
And then Joseph himself, only 17, pours gasoline on the fire.
He really does. First, there's the tattling.
Right, the evil report.
He's out tending flocks with his half-brothers, the sons of Bilhah and Zilpah, and he comes back to Jacob with bad reports about them. Now, whether he thought it was his duty or if it was just teenage arrogance, who knows? But the effect was clear. It made him look like his father's spy, amplifying the hatred and distrust.
So the coat was the visible symbol, the tattling added fuel, and then the dreams. Oh, the dreams.
If the coat was the symbol of favoritism, the dreams felt like divine confirmation of Joseph's future rule. And he shares them with, let's just say, a remarkable lack of tact.
Or maybe just youthful naivety, but incredibly unwise either way.
Unwise, maybe arrogant, maybe naive. But the dreams themselves, according to the text, are genuine divine revelations. They're laying out God's long-term plan, the first one. There are binding sheaves in the field, and Joseph's sheaf stands up straight while his brother's sheaves bow down to it.
The symbolism is pretty clear there.
Unmistakable. Authority, submission. And the brothers get it immediately. They snap back. Are you actually going to reign over us? Are you going to rule us? The hatred intensifies.
That first dream was bad enough for them. But the second one, that seems to push them over the edge, and even Jacob gets involved. What was different about the second dream?
Second dream broadens the scope dramatically. The sun, the moon, and 11 stars are bowing down to Joseph. Now, who does that represent?
Sun and moon,
Right.
Father and mother.
And 11 stars, the other brothers.
Exactly. It now includes his parents in the submission. Even if Rachel is dead by this point, it represents the parental authority structure. This is too much, even for Jacob. He rebukes Joseph publicly. Will your mother and I and your brothers actually come and bow down to the ground before you?
But privately. Privately, the text says Jacob kept the matter in mind or observed the saying. He pondered it. He clearly recognized something significant, perhaps divine, in those dreams, even if he didn't like the personal implications for his own authority. So the dreams become the final spark. They confirm the brothers' worst fears and solidify their resolve to stop this dreamer.
Which sets the scene for the betrayal at Dothan. Jacob, maybe still a bit naive or blind, sends Joseph out to check on his brothers who are pasturing the flocks near Shechem, but they'd moved on to Dothan.
And the moment they see him coming in the distance, before he even reaches them, the conspiracy begins. It's chilling how fast it happens.
Here comes that dreamer, they say.
Let's kill him, is the immediate thought. Throw him into one of these cisterns and say a wild animal devoured him. Then we'll see what comes of his dreams. Their motive is pure hatred, mixed with this defiant challenge to the prophecies themselves. Kill the messenger, kill the message.
It's shocking that murder's the first resort. But Reuben, the eldest, steps in, right? He offers an alternative.
Yes, Reuben objects to shedding his blood directly. He suggests just throwing Joseph into an empty cistern, a dry well, out there in the wilderness.
Why? What was his angle?
The sources suggest Reuben had a conflicted conscience. He wanted to appease his furious brothers in the moment, get Joseph out of sight, maybe strip him of that coat. But his secret plan was to come back later, rescue Joseph, and return him to their father. It was a compromise, really. A way to avoid immediate murder, but, well, not exactly courageous leadership either.
So they agree. They grab Joseph, strip off that coat, the very symbol of their humiliation, and throw him into the pit.
And then, this detail always gets me. They just sit down to eat.
Having lunch. While their brother is presumably terrified in a pit nearby, the coldness is astounding.
It speaks volumes about how far the envy and hatred had pushed them, how dehumanized Joseph had become in their eyes. But while they're eating, they look up and see a caravan approaching. Ishmaelites, or Midianites as they're also called, coming from Gilead, heading down to Egypt with spices, balms, myrrh.
And this gives Judah an idea.
Judah, who, interestingly, is the ancestor of the kingly line and eventually of Christ. He steps up with a pragmatic and perhaps slightly less bloodthirsty proposal.
He says, basically, what's the point of killing him and hiding it?
Right. What profit is it if we slay our brother and conceal his blood? Instead, he suggests, let's sell him to these traders. He even adds, he is our brother, our own flesh. It appeals to their greed, makes some money off him, and it lets them avoid the direct guilt of murder.
Get rid of him, make a profit, and maybe feel slightly less guilty.
Something like that. And the brothers agree. They haul Joseph out of the cistern and sell him.
For 20 pieces of silver.
20 pieces of silver, the going rate for a slave at the time. They treat their own flesh and blood as merchandise. It's just a horrific act of betrayal and commodification.
And Reuben wasn't there for the sale, was he?
No, apparently he'd stepped away. When he comes back to the pit, intending to rescue Joseph, he finds him gone. He tears his clothes, distraught, realizing the plan has gone terribly wrong, and now they're truly sunk.
So Joseph is sold. What do the brothers do next? They can't just go home. They need a cover story.
Cover story has to be convincing and final. They take that special coat, kill a goat, an animal often used in sacrifices, its blood perhaps looking similar enough, and dip the coat in the goat's blood.
Ah, it's brutal.
Then they take this bloody, torn-looking garment back to Jacob. They don't even say Joseph is dead. They present the evidence and let him draw the inevitable, devastating conclusion.
And Jacob's reaction? It's utter devastation, isn't it?
Completely. He recognizes the robe immediately. It is my son's robe. Some ferocious animal has devoured him. Joseph has surely been torn to pieces. His grief is absolute, inconsolable. He tears his own clothes, puts on sackcloth, the traditional sign of deep mourning, and his other children try to comfort him, but he refuses.
He says that famous line.
No, I will go down to the grave to my son mourning. He is utterly broken by this loss, paralyzed by the lie his sons have fed him. The irony, of course, is thick. Joseph isn't dead. He's on his way to Egypt.
Sold to Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh, captain of the guard. So he lands in a significant household right away.
Exactly. Which turns out to be crucial later on.
Okay, this story is just packed with layers. Let's shift from the narrative to the analysis our sources provide, starting with the cultural and social angle. You mentioned the patriarchal hierarchy and honor-shame culture.
Yes, Jacob's blatant favoritism completely upended the expected social order. Giving that coat to Joseph wasn't just unfair, it was a public shaming of the older sons. In that culture, honor and status were everything. To be publicly slighted like that by your own father was an attack on their very identity.
So the violence wasn't just random rage.
It was, in a twisted way, an attempt to reclaim their lost honor, to reassert the traditional authority structure that Jacob had disrupted. It was a desperate, destructive act driven by that cultural pressure.
And the act of selling him for silver? That plugs into the wider social context too, doesn't it?
Absolutely. It's a stark reminder of the brutal reality of the ancient world. Human trafficking, the slave trade, this was a part of the economy. The Midianites and Ishmaelites were merchants on established trade routes, and human beings were just another commodity to be bought and sold, transported to big markets like Egypt. Joseph's story is personal, but it's also embedded in this grim social reality.
It feels depressingly relevant. What are the modern parallels here?
Oh, they're everywhere, sadly. This story is a timeless warning about what happens when favoritism, discrimination, and unchecked envy take root. Think about workplaces, colleagues sabotaging a favored employee to eliminate the competition. Think about online dynamics, cyberbullying, where groups pile on to destroy someone's reputation or status.
The same dynamics of envy and perceived injustice leading to destructive behavior.
Exactly. And of course, the most literal parallel is modern-day human trafficking, which is still a horrific reality. The core psychological drivers, envy, resentment, the urge to dominate or destroy someone perceived as a threat, haven't changed.
Let's move to the spiritual and theological lens. This is where it gets really profound, I think. If Joseph's dreams are from God, outlining God's plan, how does God allow this horrific betrayal to happen? How does it fit?
This hits right at the heart of doctrines like divine providence and God's sovereignty. The amazing thing the sources highlight is that God doesn't just work despite human sin, he actually works through it. The brothers intended absolute evil. They wanted to silence Joseph, destroy his dreams, maybe even defy God's plan.
But God uses their evil act.
He incorporates their evil act into his larger, perfect plan. Their selling Joseph into slavery, which they meant for destruction, becomes the very mechanism God uses to get Joseph exactly where he needs to be, Egypt.
To save them all later from the famine.
Precisely. By being sold, Joseph ends up in Potiphar's house, learns administration, faces trials that build his character, and is eventually positioned to rise to power and save not only Egypt, but also the very family that betrayed him. God weaves their sin into his tapestry of redemption. It's mind-blowing, really.
It turns the whole thing on its head. Their worst act becomes the vehicle for their salvation.
Yes. And it also highlights those generational cycles we talked about. Jacob, who tricked his own father and brother, is now devastatingly deceived by his own sons. He was a victim of favoritism, and he repeats that pattern with Joseph.
It's a sobering reminder that the covenant doesn't automatically fix flawed human behavior.
Not at all. You have to actively confront and break those cycles. And notice God's silence during the immediate crisis. Joseph is in the pit. He's being sold. The heavens aren't opening up. This underscores a deep theological truth. Faith often means trusting God's promises even when your circumstances scream the opposite. Joseph had only those dreams to hold on to in the darkness of the pit and the despair of slavery.
Let's shift to the psychological analysis. This is almost a case study in family dysfunction, isn't it?
It really is. Jacob's favoritism didn't just make the brothers angry, it likely created deep psychological wounds, attachment issues, profound resentment, feelings of rejection. That festering bitterness fueled the intense jealousy and, ultimately, the desire for revenge against Joseph, who symbolized their perceived rejection.
And the way they planned the deception, the bloody coat, it suggests a deep, calculated cruelty.
Yes, it points to how envy and rage can warp people psychologically, leading to this kind of shared, cold-blooded act. Eating lunch while he's in the pit, that suggests a chilling level of dissociation or dehumanization had taken place.
What about Joseph's psychology here? He's the victim, but was he entirely blameless in how things escalated?
Well, he was young, only 17. His sharing of the dreams, as we said, showed a lack of sensitivity, maybe some youthful arrogance. There's a definite immaturity there that contrasts sharply with the huge divine destiny placed upon him. Part of his journey through suffering is clearly about psychological and spiritual maturation. He has to grow from that naive teenager into the wise, forgiving leader we see later.
In Reuben's conflicted state. And Jacob's grief.
Reuben is fascinating psychologically. He's torn. He knows it's wrong, wants to save Joseph, but lacks the courage or maybe the standing to directly confront his brothers. He opts for a compromise that ultimately fails. His guilt must have been immense. And Jacob's grief is profound. That refusal to be comforted suggests a deep trauma, a wound kept open by the finality of the lie, ensuring the family remained fractured for years.
Okay, finally, let's look at the allegorical, metaphorical, and typological aspects. This is where the story takes on even greater weight. Joseph as a type of Christ is a major theme.
It's one of the most powerful and detailed typologies in the Old Testament. The parallels are striking. Joseph is the beloved son of his father. Jesus is the beloved son of the Father. Joseph is hated and rejected by his own brothers, his own flesh and blood. Jesus was rejected by his own people.
Judah, the very brother who suggests selling Joseph, is from the tribe Jesus descends from.
Exactly. And the betrayal price Joseph sold for 20 pieces of silver, the price of a slave then. Jesus betrayed for 30 pieces of silver, the price later. It's the same act of valuing the beloved son in cold currency.
And the descent and exaltation?
Both descend into a kind of death. Joseph into the pit and slavery, which was like death to his family. Jesus into the grave. And both are then exalted to positions of immense power and authority. Joseph becomes second only to Pharaoh. Christ is exalted to the right hand of the Father. And crucially, both use their power not for revenge, but to save the very ones who rejected and betrayed them. Joseph saves his family from famine. Christ offers salvation to the world.
The parallels are really strong. What about the symbols within the story itself? The coat, the pit?
They're loaded with metaphorical meaning. The coat isn't just fancy clothing. It represents favor, distinction, identity. Stripping it and bloodying it is a violent symbolic act, killing Joseph's status, faking his death. The empty pit is a powerful symbol, too, of abandonment, hopelessness, the grave, maybe even hell. But it's also the place of descent that precedes the ascent. Being pulled out, even into slavery, is the start of his journey upwards.
A necessary descent for transformation.
Ah.
You mentioned poetic justice earlier, the allusion back to Jacob's own deception.
Yes, that's a brilliant piece of narrative irony. The brothers deceived Jacob using a goat skin, blood, and a special garment, the coat. How did Jacob deceive his father Isaac years before, using goat skins on his arms and wearing Esau's special garment? It's almost a mirror image. The deceiver is now deceived using the same props. It's a stark illustration of reaping what you sow, even within the covenant family.
Wow. So bringing this all together, this deep dive has really starkly contrasted Esau's path in chapter 36, building a functional, worldly kingdom through assimilation and separation with Jacob's family in chapter 37, the covenant line, descending into utter chaos through favoritism and envy.
It's a powerful lesson. It shows how quickly family bonds, or any community bonds really, can just disintegrate when those core issues of fairness, envy, and unresolved trauma aren't addressed. Divine promises don't negate the need for basic human decency and relational health.
In fact, the biggest test for Jacob's family wasn't some external enemy, was it? It was their own internal brokenness.
Exactly. The wounds were self-inflicted.
Which leads us perfectly into our final provocative thought for you, our listeners, to take away and think about.
Reflect on this. Joseph's story powerfully suggests that sometimes your deepest trials, those moments you feel utterly betrayed, misunderstood, maybe even metaphorically thrown into a pit or sold out by those closest to you, those painful experiences might actually be the necessary path. God, in his sovereignty, can weave even the malice and sins of others into the fabric of his plan for you, using those very hardships to shape you, position you, and ultimately fulfill the purpose he revealed. The road to your destiny might not look like a promotion, it might look like a pit stop, but it could be the exact route required to turn what was intended for evil into incredible, redemptive good.